be more intimate with you, Lord. Turning away from all the darkness, following you to where the light is. Guide the steps I'm taking, guard my heart's desires, till I'm living for you, a disciple of truth, full of holy fire that burns with your passion. Renew a right spirit deep in me. Set me free, free to live with your passion. Living for your will and nothing more. With passion for you,
Welcome to Pure Passion. My name is David Kyle Foster, and I'm your host for today's program. What do you do when your son or daughter tells you they're gay? Or what if your brother or sister pulled you aside one day and sprung the same news on you? Or how about that roommate of yours? What if someday you caught them in a situation that made it clear that there was something about their life that they hadn't been telling you? Do you think you'd know how to handle such a situation? And even if you could handle the initial revelation, do you know what you would do to help them? In most cases, the answer is a big fat no to all of the above questions. Today's program is just for you. We're going to hear from folks who've been there and they've done that. They're going to share with us some very moving and dramatic details of what they did right and what they did wrong. And not every story is fully resolved either. You're not going to want to miss a minute of this, and I'll be back at the end of the program to wrap things up.
When I got pregnant with Wayne, we were elated. I mean, and then when we found out Wayne was a boy, it was, he was thrilled beyond words. I felt the same way. And of course, you know, you have all these thoughts and desires for your children, and Wayne, we hoped he would go in the direction his dad went in, which was in the Navy at the time.
I'd get up in the mornings to help Maria, and I'd go change his diapers and whatever, let her sleep as much as she could, sleep in a little bit when I was home on the weekends. But her baby sister lived down the street, Maria's baby sister, and she was always in our house. And when she was there, as Wayne got up and was a little toddler, if she came in, he'd go to her, and she took control of him. And due to my immaturity, I let that affect the relationship that we had. I think that followed on through life. I was in submarines and gone a lot, and so we really never had a close relationship until it was too late.
We were married 7 years before he was born, so we had waited a long time for him. And of course, he was just, you know, the joy of our life when he was born. And he was a boy, and I was glad to have a boy for Joe, a son. So we were very, very happy.
When Wayne was about, 6 years old or so, we'd transferred to Hawaii, and mostly in the neighborhood were girls. And you know, he was playing with the girls and stuff, and like one day he said, I wish I was a girl, and that bothered me very much. So it seemed like as we transferred, everywhere we moved, there was mostly girls in the neighborhood. There wasn't many boys. And then at about age 13, 14, when he was in puberty, he was having problems, and I took him to a counselor. I was working with the Navy at Alcohol Rehab Center in Jacksonville, Florida, and took him to the counselor there. And I expressed to the counselor that was he struggling in this area? Was he questioning who he was or what he was supposed to be or whatever? And the counselor says, no, he's got girlfriends. I don't think he has a problem there. And he had this girl he was really close to, but she liked him as a friend. He was a little overweight then, so He had a lot of girls that liked him as a friend. He didn't have a girlfriend. And so basically I was wondering during that time.
His friends were constantly teasing him, the children that lived around the neighborhood, because Wayne had somewhat of a little prissy walk and to them. And you know, I would notice it too, and he just, but I thought, well, he's chubby, so, you know, he just shakes a little more than the average. And I guess I would just make excuses and deny it. And the names that they called him, of course, were the typical names that they call children. And he had, I noticed one time he had this male friend that was just the cutest little guy, and they had the best relationship. And all the girls liked this guy. And the girls that Wayne liked him too. So Wayne was frustrated in that, but he would get mad when they would take his friend, the guy, away from him when they had things planned to do, which, again, I thought, well, that's normal, because I could remember being jealous or whatever if I was playing with somebody and the other group of kids came along and took them away, you know, and so I didn't really think that there was any problem there, but I knew he was having some kind of trouble, and I couldn't put my finger on it because I didn't, for one moment, really see that. If I did, it was brief, and I'd go, it's not there. He loves girls too much, you know, and what they had said, the counselors and all that. No, he's got girlfriends. I mean, that if they've got girlfriends at his age, that's not a problem.
We did not find out about his struggle until he was 23 years old. He was able to keep it from us all these years. Of course, at times I wondered why he had a long face, but I just always thought because he was an only child and that he somewhat was a bit lonely. But the thoughts maybe had run through my mind, but I never thought about them.
It totally caught me off guard. I had no earthly idea until he told us and he was 23. He had graduated from college and was home for a friend's wedding. It was Father's Day weekend. And that Sunday morning, we were getting up, getting ready to go to church as usual. And Mary and I remember it differently. She says that he told her first, but as I remember, I thought we were all sitting together in the living room. He was sitting on a sofa, and we were in a love seat, and tears run down his face, and he told us that he thought he might be gay. I felt like I said, you know, well, in my mind, you're not. I've never seen any tendency out of you that made me believe that you were anything but heterosexual. And I don't know what's got you mixed up and confused like this, but, you know, it won't take us but a little while, and we'll figure it out, and we'll fix it, and you'll go on. It did feel kind of like a knife had been stuck in my stomach and twisted, you know, but I said, but I've never had any indications of this, so, you know, this is just, I don't know where this kid came up with this from, but we've always been able to fix everything else. We can fix this too.
I felt like my world had just crashed down, but at the same time, though Bart was always such an obedient child, I've described him as a piece of cake to raise. I knew he loved us, and we loved him dearly, and I blamed it there again on the loneliness. My first words to him was, "Son, you're not gay. You may be lonely, but you're not gay." He sat and cried.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone. Your passion, nothing less I will.
One of the looming questions on the mind of many parents today is, how can I prevent my child from developing homosexual confusion? One book that attempts to answer that question is Dr. Joseph Nicolosi's A Parent's Guide to Preventing Homosexuality. Based on over 12 years of treating unwanted homosexuality as a clinical psychologist, Dr. Nicolosi addresses specific behavioral patterns in the parent-child relationship that encourages unhealthy same-sex attraction. Although it is written from a clinical perspective rather than a Christian one, Dr. James Dobson has praised the book, noting that it ought to be read by every parent. Homosexuality is a developmental disorder that can, in most cases, be prevented or mitigated. So this book is an invaluable tool for any parent of a young child. There are answers to this dilemma, so get informed. To obtain A Parent's Guide to Preventing Homosexuality by Joseph Nicolosi, simply go to purepassion.us.
They would just tease him to tears. And I went to the school about it as well. And I said, I want it stopped. I think it's cruel, and I don't want him called that. And I would tell him occasionally, I'd say, Wayne, you've got to remember one thing. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt you. And he'd say, Mom, you just don't understand it. And he would get very angry about them calling him those names.
My prayer to God was, God, help me to be able to do whatever it's going to take for this kid to get his mind straightened out, because I know you didn't make him that way. We had been hearing, even though I never thought any much about it, that people were born gay, and that they really, well, I never bought into that, even though I didn't feel like I was ever going to have to deal with it personally. But, Lord, give me the strength, whatever it takes, to say the right thing, to do the right thing, whatever it's going to take to help this kid get his mind back straight like it ought to be. But I never was mad at him. I never felt like, that you've done something to me or to my child or to our family that I need to be mad at you about.
I just prayed constantly, for him and for God to give him the strength and for God to help him get straightened out. We just felt like that this was going to pass, that he had never shared anything like that with us before. He had never caused us a minute's problem.
I don't think that came until he was about 15 that he was fighting it. He was beginning to struggle with the temptation. And I'll never forget one time he had this guy friend. One night, the guy spent the night at our home, and I went to go in the bedroom, and the door was locked. And I thought, why is this door locked? And I knocked and knocked, and Wayne came to the door. And I said, why is this door locked? He said, no reason, just forgot, And I thought, well, they were probably smoking in here. See, I wouldn't look at anything but what I knew as typical. I didn't, I'm sure in my mind I just never really wanted to go there and think about it. Underneath it all, when I think back on it, it was a fear that I had deep down within inside of me, and I just kept denying it, just saying, no, no, no. Sometime
after that day that he told us he thought he was gay, he was back home at another time and had told us that he realized that was not a lifestyle for him. He understood, the where they came from, the agony that the gay community went through, people who were struggling to, come out of the closet with their feelings. He understood all of that, but this lifestyle was not for him, and that, he was going to not live that lifestyle. And, we were on cloud nine. What better word could you have gotten? And I guess I was I'm a very trusting soul anyway. And so didn't realize that most time it just doesn't happen that way. You just don't decide I think I am, that I think I'm not going to be. But I went on, it never crossed my mind again. This kid's straight as an arrow. Until we went in the middle of the night because we couldn't get him on the phone and to his apartment, as Marion just said, and we found evidence.
as a child growing up, anybody that was queer was laughed at. And I certainly wouldn't want to have a son, and especially with the male relatives in our family, you know, they poked fun at like everybody else, and it was something you just never considered would happen in your family. And I think that that was the one thing that I just couldn't accept in my son. I mean, it was this feeling that won't happen, it can't happen.
That was the most painful experience I've ever experienced. It was just like my stomach just knotted up and somebody had just punched me as hard as they could there. I think probably we just clung to each other and prayed and called on the Lord, because we were going to church then regularly, and Wayne was going to church. He was an acolyte in the church. So it was like all the hopes and dreams I had for him, you know, being successful and maybe going to the Naval Academy and making a good life, plus having grandchildren and just all of this had vanished. He was our only son, and so just I gave up. All hopes were gone then of ever having a normal family relationship after that.
It took a while to get control of myself, and Durwood and I just grabbed hold of one another and wept and wept and wept. I don't even know for how long. It seemed like eternity, and we wept all day long and just kept crying out. And one particular time, Durwood was in such agony he couldn't even talk. He just moaned out to the Lord, and I was scared for the fact that he would just lose his mind over this. And we got through that first crying jag, and I told her what I said, I've got to see Wayne. I just feel like I need to talk to him. I need to see him and hold him and talk to him about this. Because I'm sure in my mind at that time I thought, we've got to figure out a way to fix this child. We can't just ignore this. This is something that's not going to go away. He came in, and the pain was just really unbearable almost. And I just wanted to put my arms around him. And I did, and cried, and he was crying pitifully. And Durwood was crying pitifully, and we were all three huddled there hugging. And I remembered saying, Wayne, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this, son. I love you. I love you.
Pure passion that beats for Christ alone. Pure passion, nothing less I will.
What do you do when homosexuality comes knocking on your door? Author Joe Dallas has written an excellent book that answers that very important question. It's called When Homosexuality Hits Home: What to Do When a Loved One Says They're Gay. If you've been watching our show, you already know how wise and biblically balanced Joe Dallas is when he teaches or gives advice on matters such as these. In this book, Joe gives practical, step-by-step advice on how to deal with the many conflicts and emotions experienced by parents, grandparents, siblings, and extended family members when they learn of a loved one's homosexual struggle. It is a very important crisis point, and everyone should be ready before it happens. You do know someone who is gay. They just may not have told you yet. Don't neglect being prepared to help a homosexual loved one. They're not the enemy. They are loved by God, who can and wants to heal them. To get When Homosexuality Hits Home, simply go to purepassion.us. That's purepassion.us.
Then we went and called a priest at the church we were going to. And that was terrible, the way it was handled. And in reflection, I guess the priest didn't know how to handle it. So we went there and told him, and he looked at us and said, well, we need to pray. And his prayer was that we would turn our son over to God, because we'd botched the job as parents, and we should get out of the way and let God take care of it. And that was that. Thank you. I need to go home. Basically was his non-verbs and the way he was behaving because he was irritated. You know, he had to come there to start with. So we left, and that was just devastating to us.
He really wanted help. So we get the Jacksonville phone book, and we look and find and talk to some other people who had been there, and quote on the shingle outside on the business card, Christian counselor. So we make an appointment and we go to see the Christian counselor. And the Christian counselor's counsel was, you're born that way, there's nothing you can do about it, learn to live with it, enjoy it, go back to Atlanta, be who you were born and meant to be, and your mother and daddy are your biggest problem.
He was looking for a professional besides us to tell him that he wasn't born gay.
That there were other options.
And he truly appeared that he did not want this lifestyle. And I really do. I feel like if we could have got him to the right person at that time, he was ready for help, because he had kept this inside all of his life. And he was at the point where he could stand it no longer.
And I'm not hearing that you should expect a miracle or pray for a miracle or anything. They wanted us to accept it. So we went off looking for another church again. And we ended up at a church where they didn't believe that you're born that way and that there is hope through Christ. And they had a small group that met of ex-gays, and this was that spark of hope that we were looking for, that we wanted for our son. And there came the time when he went back out there, and he moved in with this male friend, and he wanted me to come over and see his place, you know, and it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, was go over there and see how he was living. And I mean, I just felt this spirit in the house that was just not a godly spirit.
He shared one instance with us, and that he had tried to leave, and the guy he said, wrestled him to the floor and held him down and wouldn't let him leave.
Said would not get off of him, so
yeah.
he told me.
But then after that, you know, he would try to tell you how great it was, how everything was just perfect, you know. But you could look at his face and tell that he was in pure misery. I mean, there was not a smile on his, you know, his face. If you called the house, this other guy answered. When Bart would be on the phone, it was just as nervous a conversation, and it was not just a few minutes and it was over.
Then the next night, on Tuesday night, this person had been stalking him and wouldn't leave him alone, and he ended up taking his life by strangling him to death.
He came into his apartment, back into his apartment that night, and killed him. Had a phone call and told me to come home right now and don't come by yourself. And I don't know why or how, but I didn't think something happened to Marion. I didn't think something happened to my mother or any of our family. I knew something was bad wrong with Bart then, but I couldn't find out what it was. And so she did tell me. We finally talked to each other on the phone as I was leaving out of Macon, headed south, what had happened. And my first thought then was he'll be all right. We need to be praying for the guy that killed him. And that was a long 3-hour ride home by yourself.
Just a few weeks before this, I was driving down the road and crying and praying. And I mean, I just knew that the ultimate, you know, was for Bart to, that was the ultimate thing, was, you know, for him to go to heaven. And I just prayed these words that, God, if you will just take Bart out of homosexuality, and I will know without a doubt that he will be in heaven and live in heaven with you for eternity, that I could live the rest of my life. And after, you know, it's when I was talking out loud to myself, and then I realized what I had said, but something, I could not take those words back. And that was a few weeks before he died. And then a friend shared a letter with us after his death, where Bart had written her. It was an older lady that he worked with at the bank. And in this letter, he told her that it had been a hard 2 years, and but that he was seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and that he was taking a day at a time, and that he wanted God's will to be done in his life.
Tears just began to stream down my face, and I said, Lord, Lord, heal my son. And I looked back down at the Bible, and it was in Matthew, and the words were, and the Lord said, yes, I will heal him. And I know it's going to happen one day. I know it with all my heart. And it's just a matter of God's perfect timing.
Father, I pray for our viewers today who need your guidance and your comfort as they go to battle for their gay loved one. Show them the way, what to say, what not to say, the timing, the resources, the divine appointments, all the details, Father. Break the power of deception from their lives and set them free. In Jesus' name, amen. For additional resources, you can contact us at purepassion.us. All of the programs from Season 1 of Pure Passion can be viewed from that same website, or you can get them in DVD form. We also have books and CDs specifically designed for parents and friends of homosexual strugglers. Remember, it's purepassion.us. We'll see you here next week, and I'm David Kyle Foster for Pure Passion, wishing you God's very best.